So now this is the third recording on 22nd September with Deepak and Dhanu. And we are going to round up today about their life and their views on hills and everything. So they are an experienced chef. So here we go.
We left Kinnaur in 1993. And
it was very sudden. The news of Deepak being posted out sort of hit us almost between the eyes.
We were actually down here in we had gone to drop our son to school.
Yeah.
When we learned. So then we just went back to pack.
They do it like that? I mean, very suddenly?
Sometimes they do. That was President's rule, and in Himachal there was no elected government and at that time, and there was some eccentric chief secretary who was under pressure to transfer one district collector and decided that if he is under pressure to transfer one, he will transfer 11.
And then they were sent off to Delhi.
So then
you were posted to Delhi then?
I was posted to Delhi almost immediately, within a month or two.
Well, I stayed on. I got a job. I got a job with the UNFPA, so I stayed on with the children while Deepak...
You stayed on
in Shimla.
Shimla. No, I got posted down to Shimla. I was here for 3-4 months. And then I was posted to Delhi. And she stayed here. I went to Delhi, but I had a lot of difficulty adjusting to life in Delhi. It was very difficult.
I can imagine.
And the weather and too many people, after being up in the mountains, suddenly having so many people around was very difficult also.
Delhi was under what post?
I was in the finance ministry.
In central government?
In the central government.
Manmohan Singh.
And Manmohan Singh was finance minister.
And the other fellow.
So then I came back. I came back within 15 months. I didn't stay long. It did not suit me at all.
So our Kinnaur farewell is something when people heard that we were leaving, it was like, I mean, I'm saying it myself, maybe it doesn't sound very modest, but it was like someone had died. Because people came from all over in the morning and we'd been packing, and so we went out into the garden, huge big garden, and people came and the women would sit on one side and the men would sit on the other side, and they'd just come up to us and the women would cry, the men would give Deepak a topi and a khatak, and people just sat. And we Deepak cried, but I cried like my eyes were red and swollen, and then there was this procession through Pio Bazaar.
Wow.
And everywhere we went, we had to stop in the villages along the road, and it was really very moving. It was really like, it was a very...
we had to go to... We stayed for 3-4 days after my transfer just to... Pack and visit various places where people were very insistent that we must come.
No, but this all means they really loved you.
It was very touching.
It was both ways, no? I mean, it was...
Yeah, it was very touching. And
it was like leaving a family. And we were looking forward to that one more year in, at least.
Yeah, I
Kalpa.
was, definitely. I thought I'd be staying for another year. But it was not to be. And
now in retrospect, it was a good thing.
All happens for the best. We maintained our relationship.
You said you were doing in Shimla, UN what?
I worked with the UNFPA, the United Nations Fund for Population Activities. So I worked as an NGO coordinator. I mean, the health department of Himachal had funding from the UNFPA. And since I hadn't worked on health till then, but since I had worked with women in Rajasthan, and so I was interviewed, and I suppose that, I won't say that here, but so I got the job and I stayed on, and Deepak's senior officers were nice enough to allot the house to me after Deepak left. And we had a phone, which those things were very crucial at that time, especially when you have little children.
Yeah, there were no phone. India still had that phone shortage, landline, and very difficult to get phone lines and all. and she stayed on here with the children. I mean, son was at school.
Boarding school.
But daughter was with her.
How was your work? What did you do?
I worked with the health department to look at work, non-governmental organizations around Himachal and checking out on what work they were doing on health and safe deliveries and contraception and disinfection. So one was looking basically at NGOs all over that were in Himachal that the health department could associate with and carry forward their program. Now UNFPA, even those days, was fairly forward thinking. Unlike Himachal, and the head of the UNFPA here was someone called Sharada Yangar, who's from Bombay, who done his medicine and pediatrics in Bombay and had got this job. So he was exposed to a lot more than what the locals had any idea about. Because at one level, people here are fairly insular. I mean, they will not get someone from outside to, sort of share ideas or work or whatever they had done. I was too young, I think, to even understand what could be done. So one went along largely with what Sharad and the other people with UNFPA were doing. So I stayed on here and I worked here and since I had this experience with Telonia, so a few people here had worked with Telonia.
What is Telonia?
Telonia is an organization set up by Bankar Roy and Aruna Roy. By Bankar Roy in Rajasthan, between Jaipur and Ajmer. And it was the first in a village called Telonia. And it was probably one of the first organizations that actually was encouraged young people to give up, take a break or give up and look at rural development as an alternate profession. It wasn't really a profession, it was more a vocation, you could say, unlike what it is now. And live in the villages, spend time seeing what you would like to do, where you would fit in. Would you fit in with the engineering wing, which dug wells or tube wells for people providing water, or would you be with the forestry department? Would you work with children's education, night schools? Would you look at income generation programs for women? So it was quite an exciting, and there were lots of people from all over the country. So it was an exciting time. So since I had worked there after JNU, there were people here who headed organizations and these people had received their training in Telonia under Bankar and Aruna Roy. Aruna later but moved away and started the Mazdoor Kisan. What is MKSS ka full form kya hai?
Sangathan hai.
Something Sangathan. And she also sort of got people together and started the whole right to information movement. So I worked with the UNFPA and Deepak was in Delhi. And I must tell you a sweet story. Our daughter was very little those days and was used to seeing mountains that she had to look up to. So when we came to our Shimla house, she would say, "Par pahadi kahan hai?" So we point, ye pahad hai, ye pahad. She said, "Pahad niche thode na hote, pahad upar hote." So it took her some time to get used to, being in Shimla. But it was a good time to be in Shimla.
So when does Sahib return? After 15 months, you said?
Yeah, I was back.
How was the experience in Delhi? Anything worth recording or just rooting and boring? Or you learnt a lot?
Well, I learned a lot about government and I actually wrote a book for the Corps of Engineers in those days. They had gone to Nanda Devi. In after 1982 or 81 was the last expedition. Then Nanda Devi was closed, if you remember. And then they opened it again in 92 they allowed them to
I
go.
just allowed engineers and one of the expeditions. Engineers.
So they wanted a write-up of that expedition of that 92. So they asked me to write it for them.
So you had gone for that expedition?
I didn't go. I wrote it purely by interviewing the climbers and the various people who had gone. They were sent, the army as usual commandeered them, and they came to meet me and they sat for interviews, and I took notes and I wrote questionnaires for them and they responded to those, and I just read accounts of Nanda Devi and wrote a book for them.
So where is the book? We haven't seen that.
I think it never went anywhere except to the Corps of Engineers.
But you have a copy, I think, or no?
No, I don't have a copy.
No. Okay.
I don't have a copy. It was brought out in a hurry by the Corps of Engineers because their commanding of their GOC was retiring and they wanted to bring it out before he retired. So they didn't even proofread it. So I'm glad it's not available because it had so many errors, editing errors.
So then you are back to Shimla, and
then I came back here and I was in various departments. I worked over time, lots in finance department and other places. But it was also an opportunity to understand more about governance and systems and policy and how they interact for people and their lives in the hills.
Now in Shimla.
In Shimla and in the hills in general. And us, of course, we went back to Delhi in between once, in 2005 to 2007.
You are posted there, okay.
I went and joined World Bank for 2 years.
Yeah, but before that, I got the MacArthur Foundation Fellowship while I was in Simla to work on population innovations, and Deepak got the Robert McNamara Fellowship.
Oh, wow.
To work on
Spiti. I actually did a monograph on Spiti under that McNamara Fellowship. And Dhanu worked on women's health issues in Sirmaur district.
It was meant to be in Kinnaur actually. It was very difficult to cut the umbilical with Kinnaur. So any chance you could get to be in Kinnaur was always a blessing. But accessibility was a big issue, and there was no real NGO based there, which I could use as a base and use their people to go out and survey. So I moved it from Kinnaur to Sirmaur, which is even more it's even less developed. Kinnaur I could never say was less developed. Sirmaur was really poor. So I got the fellowship at that time. In 3 years I worked on women's health issues and lived in the field. So
what about your writing? You wrote some book on trekking?
Yeah, in 98 we brought out our book on exploring Kinnaur and Spiti. And it's about the area, it's about treks, it's about monasteries, it's about everything, about the area. So that was published in 98.
All those treks mentioned in the book, you have done it yourself?
Not all, but a fair degree. If I haven't done all of them, then I've done part of some, and some I've written up by just talking to people who have done the rest of it or read about it and written about it. But yes, a very large number I've walked myself. So it's not...
and that is still the only guidebook available really on Kinnaur as such.
It's a fairly detailed account. So yeah, there isn't, I think, a comparable book.
Else, I know for sure. So then how time went on? Any more writing, any more books, any more government papers?
I did work on travel I wrote for travel for Outlook also, for some other books. But I shifted out of travel in a sense. Although I was still trekking, I did the Charang Pass in 98 and some other treks, but I largely moved out of that. I got more and more involved with the work in public policy here and in Delhi and elsewhere. Then I was at the World Bank for 2 years.
So talking of this Charang, did you met that Lama? Sonam Gyaspa or Chitkul Lama as they call him? You had any interactions?
No, I don't remember Chitkul Lama. Chitkul had Zonkyaram, the Pradhan. The headman
small monastery of the Lama who had travelled very widely.
I see. I have no recollection of meeting him.
I see.
Yeah, because I had good memories of Chitkul. Once when I was DC in Kinnaur, I had gone to Chitkul and in summer, and all the family and others were also there, and I said it was beautiful, and everyone was saying it's beautiful and all, and the Pradhan said, "Hi, it's very beautiful now, but it's very tough in winter. Nobody ever comes to find out how we are in winter." So that next winter, I told him I will come here in January, and so we walked on 27th of January. I went there to have lunch to Chitkul, and I walked. We managed to somehow drive till Rakcham. Then we walked. We spent the night, and next morning we walked to Chitkul, had lunch, and came back. Yeah, 12 kilometers through the snow we walked one way, and it was quite interesting.
Even at the best of times, Chitkul is cold and windy even on a summer.
Madam had gone to Chitkul that time.
No,
In
not
summer
with
she
him.
gone, yeah.
Not in winter. But I have a little story to tell about being in Sangla, and we'd just gone off Sangla, gone down, and near Angmoshiresh, or what's it was called
near
Azad
the
Kashmir.
rest house.
On the forest rest house
on
and
the other
we have
side.
a trout farm. And I just leaning against a rock and looking up at the mountains quietly, and this woman came along. She had a big pile of wood on her, bundle of wood on her back, and she leant against the rock, and also we were just sitting quiet. Both of us were just standing quietly and looking. So I looked at her and I said, Sharedu, which means very beautiful in Kinora. So she said, हाँ, शारेदू, पर मैं आपके जैसे ना आती और ऐसे करके गर्म पानी मिलता मुझे, तो मैं भी तुम्हारे जैसे खड़े होके बोलती शारेदू. हाँ, तो अब मुझे कुछ नहीं दिखता, मेरे पीठ पे लकड़ी है तो मैं ऐसे झुकी हूँ और मुझे मेरे थके हुए पैर दिखते हैं. मुझे और कुछ नहीं दिखता, थक जाती हूँ मैं. And that's when I realized that the sort of lifestyle we bring into these mountains and expose these people to who have very hard lives. And it's not, I wonder, the young get very quickly influenced by outsiders, but for women, things don't change much. So that was a very touching moment for me.
Yeah, it's a changing world today. And those women, the ones with the big orchards and everything, the families, they are becoming very different from the women of
So
the
what were
earlier
the
times.
other actions with mountains apart from government work?
Basically,
Just trekking and roaming around.
and understanding more about what are the...
So now that brings to the left. What are the enough problems with these mountains and what government can do to solve those?
I have been involved with a lot of issues over time. When I was energy secretary for many years, power secretary here. Now, one of the main sources of resources for Himachal is the hydropower, and so developing that hydropower has always been a major sort of goal of government here, both to provide power within Himachal, which is not a very huge requirement, but more important to sell, to earn from hydropower by selling it to the rest of the country. And hydropower has always faced this, this enormous challenge from the environmental groups, that it really is very destructive, and it causes a lot of damage in the from a certain viewpoint.
Is it so?
But it's a difficult question in my view. I think a lot of what is said becomes emotional. It's the immediate visibility of making a road, making a tunnel, and the extraction of soil, and it's littering the hillsides. And that, the blasting or the dust which is spread while the construction is going on, and the slides that may be provoked, that becomes sort of very important to people, and they think, oh, it's so destructive. But if you look back 5 years after a project is completed, then it seems to be all stabilized. Nothing, there's no movement of anything. Things have, people have to a large extent, there are no slides left. There are no
But there are a lot of benefits for people also, locals.
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
I disagree with Deepak on that.
Well, a lot of people disagree, and that is true. Even my neighbor disagrees with me a lot, and he went and gave a report to the High Court against all hydro projects and want them all banned. And my effort was, how do we get people to feel that this is beneficial for them? If they don't, then it shouldn't happen. Only if people feel it's beneficial for them, then you should have such development.
No, but there is no golden mean. I mean,
there is, I think so.
As well as benefits.
I think so. I think so. That's always been my perspective, that you have to mitigate the what we see as adverse consequences of development. We have to somehow mitigate them, but we can't deprive the people of what are seen as benefit. That lady with a bundle of wood on her back, doesn't she deserve to have electricity come and heat her water, rather than have to carry that wood, on her back to go and light the fire? I think she deserves it. She deserves an easier life. She deserves also all that modern, development, electricity and other roads, etc. can bring to her. And therefore, you have to look at, how do I mitigate the worst aspects of what we consider development and its consequences, and actually leverage what is beneficial. And that becomes very important. So in the case of hydropower, we were always constantly looking at issues like, if water flow is reduced and will cause a loss to ecology, then what is the level of water flow which we must ensure will flow in the streams, regardless of the requirements for hydro? Then what is it that causes more damage? If it's blasting, should we not encourage alternate means of, cutting the rocks and the forests and, making the tunnels, etc.? What do we do about things like cutting and filling? So increasingly you have this thing about, create areas where the muck dumping is properly done, and you plant forests on them. And that is what has occurred in a lot of places now. You have, new forests in areas where you would actually cut out and fill hillsides. And so the bigger issue was, how do you get people involved with hydropower development and make them feel that this is...
And get the benefits from...
Get some benefits from that too. It shouldn't be perceived as something which is to benefit only some, the rest of India or the state government, but actually benefits local people and doesn't seem harmful to them when their water sources start drying up, apparently because of blasting, etc., and cutting the hills. So we were the first state in India to introduce a concept of benefit sharing with local people. So today in Himachal, new power projects compulsorily must share the proceeds of power produced. 1% of the revenues of power produced goes back to local communities as checks to all the local people, to the families. They're just every year.
But private companies being private companies driven by selfish... I'm not against private sector investments, but you see what the JPs have done to Sangla. You've been to Sangla. Yes. You've seen. Have you been after the JP power project came?
I went. It was being constructed. It was horrible.
And now...
But during construction, all sites are horrible.
But even now, it is absolutely that beauty of the Sangla Valley, the... what's the river? Baspa flowing down beautifully, quietly, lots of plants, lots of flowers, nothing's there. They are supposed to release 15% of the water in the river down.
No, not in Baspa.
Not much less?
No, that was, because it was built earlier.
So, that Rutrang with that amazing grandeur of big rocks and water flowing down, nothing. So, all the flora, fauna, ecology from Rutrang down to Kacham is all wiped out.
No, we are not. I think that is that is again emotional. We don't know. We don't have any evidence. that's the problem in this country. We don't actually collect evidence to try and see, are there consequences, what is happening, what has changed. If I look today, you look at a dam like the Pong Dam on the Beas. Now, this is a huge dam. It has created a lake which is
big as the sea.
Maharana Pratap Sagar. It's like a sea. Now, on the one hand, but we didn't do adequate studies on it. We still don't know. But we extol the fact that this dam has actually resulted in a new Ramsar wetland below the dam. It's a Ramsar wetland site, internationally recognized, and it was created because of the dam.
And it gets close to over 100,000.
So there can be positive impacts.
140,000 birds, wildlife migratory birds.
Yes, it's a new wetland. It's a new area for migratory birds to collect. It's become a huge, thing. And my point is that we don't know. I think human beings generally, we have a fear of what we don't know enough about, and we are status quo. So there's one aspect, one element in us which will always say, doing these new things, making these projects, etc., is very harmful. But I think it's important to collect evidence and then say. So for me, this is a very important challenge, that with every change that we want to bring about, collect the baseline evidence, try and see what changes will come, how will they interact with our lives, what will actually result in, and then inform future decision making. Don't take emotional decisions. You can end up, in the name of guarding or preventing harm to someone, you can end up not bringing benefits to a lot of people who deserve more. And
the government shares this view, and you think government, other secretaries also would implement this?
No, it's a mixed view. Even in government, it's a mixed view.
Politically, with the...
So anyone who is environment secretary will oppose it. And the power secretary will be for it. And it just goes on and on.
Decisions are made by what? CM then?
Well, in India nowadays, a lot of these decisions are made by the courts.
That's very true.
Yeah. So in this case about, there was a public interest litigation that all this hydropower development should be stopped. And this committee headed by the Environment Secretary said, yes, we must stop it. It is causing a lot of damage. But, and it was widely reported. It came in the press. The High Court was very enthusiastic about banning and stopping things. And they gave it was a very emotional report. It had no real evidence at all. But it just emotionally said that, it causes damage. So, as Energy Secretary, I had to devote a lot of time to rebutting it and to bring to the High Court's notice that this is not a scientific report at all. And to the High Court's credit, they did not pass any orders. No negative orders were passed against hydropower development.
So now, how is dealing with government? You are part of the government. So is this give you freedom? Or you have to do a lot of chaplusgiri? Or, you have to deal with politicians? Yes, sir, no, sir. Or sometimes you do something good and they also dismiss the whole idea.
It's very mixed. I don't think, politicians are a mixed lot. And even as politician, the same politician has both aspects of wanting to do good things and some vested interest in pursuing some sectional interest or personal interest also. We all have that. And it's a question of how well, as a civil servant, if you are really interested in the public interest and public better policy, how do you manage to convince them and make them look at things from their sort of public viewpoint rather than their personal viewpoint? Of course, when there's a conflict between the two, how do you resolve and make sure that they are able to see the public viewpoint as more important than their sectional viewpoint? It's difficult at times, and there are times when you can't really make them see it. And some politicians are worse than others, and some phases of their life they're worse than others. It varies.
But are they aware of this and knowledgeable?
Yes, they are bright people. They are bright people. Politicians are intelligent people. So they can see. So as I said, they can see their interests very clearly.
Their interest, but people's interest.
So which is also people's interest. One part of them sees people's interests as their interests. One part of them, but there is always this, there's a generational issue. They have a 5-year time span. They have come for 5 years. And if in the short term they feel that what you're saying is not really, or is not very supportive, but may not be harmful, that they may let it go through. But if they feel that this is really going to harm them in the short run, even if it has long-term generational value, then there's no go. There's no way they'll allow you to do those things.
So deeply also, just by instinct.
Yes, it's very evident straight away. Short-term versus long-term is very clearly evident in very many cases. Not all cases, but very many cases. So what I've found often is that you have to somehow clothe your policy change or what you want in the right language also. And also, to give you one very interesting example from sanitation, which really interests me a lot and in which I work a lot. When in India, we have always, since 1980s, we have subsidized the construction of toilets in rural areas. And we have done very badly. People's behavior doesn't change. We subsidize toilets. People sometimes build toilets, but they don't use them. Or they get built on paper. So Himachal was no different. In the 1990s, we subsidized toilets for almost 50% of rural households in Himachal. And then in 2003, I was the Rural Development Secretary, also in charge of sanitation. And I had to face the Public Accounts Committee because all those toilets were missing. There were no toilets. In the 90s, these toilets were subsidized. 1,200 rupees was given for each toilet. And suddenly there were no toilets. I mean, they were either missing or they were used for storing hay or keeping chicken or goats or whatever. And the Public Accounts Committee is very upset, fixed responsibility and all. And I was brought face to face with this problem of development, that you have a certain view of development. You want toilets to be constructed. You think it's a great thing. But people don't even think that it's important for them. So how do you tackle this? And then it brought me face to face with the fact that the key issue in this case is I have to change behavior first. Toilets are only a consequence. So how do we change behavior? How does subsidy interact? So we looked at some of the practices in other places, some approaches which are tried in Bangladesh. Then there were some pilots in Maharashtra, in Nanded and Ahmednagar district. We went there and had a look. And we discovered that really for behavior change to occur, you have to talk to the community as a whole. You have to ignite behavior change in the community as a whole, entire village. And for that, don't talk about toilets. And don't talk about subsidies for toilets. You have to make people realize the harm they are doing to themselves by defecating in the open. That how it impacts them. And that, very crudely put, you have to be able to convey to them, you are eating your own shit. And that strikes home. If it strikes home, they want to do something about it. And they'll do something about it. But if you want to do something about it, they don't understand it's their problem. They think it must be your problem. That's why you want a toilet for them. So this, to put this approach through in Himachal after that, we needed to stop subsidies. But can you imagine politicians saying, no, I don't want to give subsidies to the poor? It's totally antithetical to their view of how things... So it was for me a very interesting year and a half of working on how to get this policy change in Himachal. So I got some studies done which showed that toilets are not being used. Money is not a problem. People have televisions, people have motorcycles. They don't have a toilet in the house because they don't believe in it. And behavior is the key issue and how to get it. And then I organized meetings of elected representatives. So over 1 year, I tried to build an entire environment in government which said that subsidy is not important, behavior change is critical, and let us go about doing things the way behavior will really be changed. So when I went to cabinet, finally, it was still a problem how to tell the cabinet that, we'll stop this subsidy and then this will take off. You know what helped me? What helped me, because to just say this would have created a problem in the cabinet. But what helped me was to look at it from the politician's perspective. What will appeal to the politician? I said, they will possibly what will appeal to them is, let us give a prize to best performing villages. Huh? That will appeal to them. Yes, we will give an award. They can stand on stage and award people or not. So I sold the whole policy as a policy which will award best performing Gram Panchayats. And I underplayed, I mentioned it, that we will stop giving subsidy. But everybody said it doesn't matter, because what had happened is they had also seen over the years these toilets being built and not used and people not being interested in toilets. So they said, okay, if you don't give subsidy for something which people don't even want, it doesn't matter too much. It didn't harm their interest in that sense. And that's how we managed to get this policy change. And in 7 years, we moved from 28% of rural households with toilets in Himachal to 84%.
Wow.
All with people's own money, no subsidies, zero. People just understood that they better do something about it. So this village which we are living in, it didn't have toilets. People, even my neighbors would defecate in the open in 2006-07 when we built the house in 5. They didn't have a toilet. None of our neighbors had toilets. Within 2 years, everybody had toilets. This entire area had toilets. And they'd all done it themselves. And it was all came out of this whole feeling. So, so you can tackle politicians sometimes, but I'm not trying to...
Thinking of politicians every 5 years is not a problem. You always deal with a new guy and a new approach. And
it's the same guys every 5 years. They're not
it's an
really...
anti-incumbency thing. So 5 years, this chap with his party comes in and then he gets voted out, and the next chap who's been there 5 years.
The hills...
That is a problem for you. Different approach, different person.
Not so much approach, but sometimes it can be a problem when if you are labelled as one party's person or one group's sort of, you're supposed to be closer to them, then you have a problem with the next group. That can happen and has happened with civil servants over the years. But it's not a good thing. It's a sad fact, but it is becoming prevalent, I must say. That's not a very good thing. But the interesting thing about governance in the hills, and this is true right across the Indian Himalaya, is that all our hills have these basically frugal economies, subsistence-based people, barring the Kashmir Valley, which was richer, but most of the other areas, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Arunachal, all these hills, they were poor, subsistence-based, very frugal areas. And there was not much economic differentiation among the people. And wherever there was more community organized relationships, like in Himachal, villages were organized on community lines and all. When government intervened with its development, the fruits were spread more evenly. So there was no discrimination between scheduled caste and lower caste and upper caste in the schools, in the sense of allowing people to sit and study. They would maintain their distinctions of not eating together, no intermarriage, etc. But the idea that children could come and study was accepted quite easily. So the children could all come and sit and study in the same schools. The health center would treat everybody in the village regarding of caste. So in a sense, the fruits of development were more evenly spread. And there was also, when there is more community spirit, corruption is less. Because you are the same people dealing with each other. So roads came, water supply schemes came, various changes came. So governance in general at one level, better in the hills than in the mainstream Gangetic plain. And that remains true to this day, although corruption has been growing over time, even in the hills enormously. But to a large extent that remains. And that creates its own problems about this anti-incumbency. So in Bihar, when you have a situation where governance is so poor that if Nitish Kumar comes and says, improves things even a little bit, it's like a huge difference in percentage terms. If you're at 5 and you take, on a 100-point scale, if you're at a level of 5 and you go to 10, it's 100% improvement. So Nitish brings 5 to 10 and can get re-elected. But in Himachal, if you're at 50, you go to 55, it's only 10%. So the politician doesn't get re-elected. It's not visible to people. So that is a major challenge, how to make that quantum change and convince the politician. But it's hard. The politician realizes that it's a lot of effort to go from 50 to say 60, and they give up. They don't want to do it. Yeah. So then corruption grows. Because if they are giving up and not looking at governance, then they are saying, in 5 years, let's make some money. We are not coming back anyway. So then corruption grows. So that is a problem for our hills. And that's what's been happening to us. So we are progressively, the level of corruption is growing in Himachal. And this incumbency problem is... So we need some leader who says that, no, I'm willing to make the effort of going from 50 to 60. And for, those 5 years, I'm going to really make that effort and try and come back. I don't know when we'll get them. We haven't got them yet.
So now back to hills now. How does plans to rejuvenate hills, what conditions they are, or what politicians are doing, or what you have plans, anything in your future, do anything individually?
No,
are the NGOs individually doing something? Like, how are
there are NGOs working on environment issues.
Damage to
the environment.
Himachal.
But So what is the damage from which angle? If I look at it from an environmental angle, forest cover is increasing in Himachal. The forest survey figures show that we are improving a bit over the years.
There is no timber mafia or cutting.
It's very little. It's so little that it is inconsequential. There will be talk of it every now and then, but it's really not of any importance. As I said, our coverage is actually going up. And although some people say density is not going up, density is also actually going up. Ground densities and all are also increasing. It's not a bad situation in my view from a forest point of view. There is, even from an erosion point of view, it's not so bad at all. No, this is from... So it's not that bad, but there is... the problem is more in terms of governance, and the problem of how to keep, as we were discussing the other day, how do we get more community involvement in all this? That is a key problem, and that continues to be a problem which is in a sense created by our politics. It's a politics of patronage. It is a politics where the politician wants to be seen as doing something for you, and you as a supplicant, as public, are approaching the patron for a favor. So in this kind of relationship, bringing an empowered community into the scheme is tough. A politician doesn't want to have an empowered community because then they are not doing patronage anymore. I mean, it's a community which is doing things for themselves because they have the power to do it. The community also doesn't want to become empowered because it's scared of responsibility. And it's used to the idea of going to the patron and asking for things to be done, whether it's fixing the water supply scheme or the road, etc. They are not... The idea of doing it themselves in an environment where, contractors are corrupt, politicians are corrupt, they are also not very sure that they want this kind of empowerment.
Sanan and Swadi, we should be happy.
Thank you, sir.
And on 22nd of September, and now we will have heard all about their views and mountain experiences. So now we little catch up on their personal life and looking at future. So Dhanu, you are a Bombay girl. So what all happened? I've been short, and then about your children. And then finally, both of you, how do you look to the future now in government as well as NGO or retired life?
I've lived longer in Himachal, I think, than I have lived in Bombay. And it is difficult at one level now to go back to what is Mumbai from the Bombay I knew. But I still enjoy going there, meeting people, being a part of the larger cultural fabric of the city. But I think I realized this time it hit me quite badly that which I thought wasn't true, but my heart is still in Shimla at one level. And when we come back to this house, then it's always very nice to be here away from all and though one misses people and so
city life.
And city, yes. I mean, as one sees more trees, then one sees people, but I think I still need a break from this once in a while. And yeah, and
so
then
children have grown up and have flown in their own.
Yes, our children's hearts.
Yeah, you can say the names and
we have
details on record.
We have a son who will be 33 in over a month's time, and a daughter. His name is Sujay, and he's a trained graphic designer from NID, and now works as an artist full time. Lives in Cape Town with his wife Sophia, who is a lecturer, and she also is at the moment traveling and teaching young people. We have a daughter, Jayati, who lives in Delhi and is teaching in the British school there. But the interesting bit is that Jayati will be 28 in January. The interesting bit is that the children, because they have grown up here and have, this is their home for the family, they are emotionally very deeply attached to this place. So this for them is home. This is where they associate with the lifestyle, the people, and including, we just told our son that the next time he comes, our driver who's driven for us for close to 20 years now, off and on, Bhoop, may not be there to pick him up, and he was really upset. And I was sharing this with our driver that Sujay was very upset that you may not be there, and our driver Bhoop had tears in his eyes. He says, no, but it can't be like that. So I said, Bhoop, official relationships might not exist, but as a family, as a personal relationship, this will carry on for life. You have brought up our children till you decided that they were fit enough to drive. They never got a car. You were the one who taught them and passed their driving skills. So, yeah, I think...
so you are more of Himachali to the...
I would... For years, we told the Kinauras, my favorite story to the Kinauras were...
Oh, you're going one level still ahead.
Yeah, not just specifically Kinnaur. That I used to say that, we were born Kinauras, but because we committed some crime in our life when we were in Kinnaur, so we were born as kochas or outsiders, But our heart still is very much in Kinnaur. And and when our son got married, there were so many people who came from Kinnaur, walked over landslides, took buses, but reached in time to be there for our son's wedding. In Shimla, because it was important for them to be a part of this occasion. And it was interesting because people who came in only saw Kinnauri caps and malas and thought this wasn't Deepak Sanan's son's wedding, but a Kinnauri wedding. So, and I think...
future, what do you plan to do? Children, here, any other work?
Work, well, there are always dreams one wants to...
Any NGOs?
I have been thinking about doing a course in speech therapy to work with children who are disabled, who cannot express themselves, but that has always been up in the air. Let's see. At the moment, a bit of traveling on the cards, though Deepak seems to be doing more than I do, and he doesn't like it, and I love it.
We hope that whatever traveling, more and more we'll be traveling together post-retirement. We intend living here through the summers and then going down.
Living here means at Inayat.
At Inayat in the village Purani Koti in rural Shimla, outside Shimla town, and just east of Shimla.
And 15 kilometers away.
15 kilometers away. Just outside Mashobra. So we hope to continue to live here.
And have lots of friends visiting us.
And have lots of friends visit.
And you specifically.
And maybe take trips in summer to the higher mountains from here with friends occasionally.
So now that brings us, how do you look at your retirement and what do you intend to do? What are your plans, your feelings? Getting sad, upset?
No, not at all. Very excited. Very excited about the fact that this is... there's a certain freedom from the constraints of government to live and
but no
to
power
enjoy.
Doesn't make a difference.
No, seems to make no difference at all. The power, I think, seems to make no difference at all. Maybe because I never felt very powerful.
And that's the beauty of Himachal. There is not such a disconnect between people in government and the ordinary citizens.
But there are enough relationships formed with people to ensure that the everyday matters of life are dealt with. And other than that, what else? There is nothing. So we look at, as I said, 7 to 8 months a year spent in Ayat with maybe some holidays here and there.
But what do you plan to do in this lovely house? Any work? You
Yeah.
have to be creative. You see, lifelong you have to be active.
Yes.
That is important.
From my personal angle, I will be continuing to work with a certain number of organizations outside Himachal.
Which ones, though, if you don't mind?
One is this relation to sanitation, which I spoke about in our last session. My work on sanitation. So I continue to do that with a foundation based in Calcutta. So that requires visiting Calcutta maybe 2-3 times a year, but a lot of the work can be done is writing work, which I can do here, and some visits outside for some meetings, some discussions, some trainings. Lectures, yeah, lots of lecturing. And so there's lecturing on sanitation with this foundation, there's lecturing on my finance background and other, my work on, I did a lot of work on property titling when I was in government, and in relation to that, I hope to teach in winters in Bangalore for a month every year. And then I also continue to work on public policy and governance issues outside. I also hope to have a society in Shimla which will try to address issues of governance and public policy in the hills. So that will be the fourth stream of work. So that should keep us pretty occupied.
Because such an expertise and gathered intelligence and maturity cannot go waste.
Continue to be really occupied with all this work and all these discussions and all these, projects, and basically influence policy in a way which will enable hill people to live better lives, more productive lives, and mitigate the worst aspects of development.
And without help of government, you think that is possible?
No, it's always with the government. You have to influence government. When I say you do all this, you influence the government to do it better.
You are out of it now, going to be out of it.
So from outside, influence government policy to do it better. That is the idea. How to do it. Difficult, but
given the fact that Himachal government, unfortunately, and I mean, I'm saying being very honest, doesn't really appreciate outsiders and anyone. Oh yes, we'll always be outsiders. Even though apple and prosperity to the state was brought in by an outsider.
That's a serious statement.
Yeah.
Outsider for 40 years of living in Himachal and doing so much for them.
And identifying ourselves with this place.
Hill people are insular. They love visitors. They have no problem with outsiders visiting. They're very hospitable. They will always be very friendly with them. But they are scared of outsiders who come to live amongst them. There is a fear of the outsider who tries to make a home amongst them. That is something which we've realized over the years.
And I think the less Deepak associates with my personal feeling is that the less he associates with people who don't appreciate what he has to give or what he has to share. Give sounds very patriarchal, but what he has to share. I think it's important that he not associate with them, because there is a world outside, which unfortunately people here don't realize, There is a world that is willing to be exposed to and aware of new ideas. And I think the lesser the association he has with this, just use this as a base and as a home, and then move out and do more things that excite him or interest him. On that happy note, I'm going to go to the kitchen and organize lunch for you guys.
I think on that happy
all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harish.
Thank you.
All the best.
Yeah.